Here. Seeing some names that I recognize, that's always a good thing. Welcome. Good morning, Alex. Alex was part of our work group. Thank you so much for being here and helping us select such amazing topics for Mental Health Action Week. All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Jerry, I'm just gonna go, if we can go to the welcome page so people could start to answer the question.
Click ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you can, please go ahead and add your name, your affiliation or department, what brings you peace in moments of challenge and stress. Please add that to the chat. I want to hear from you today, how you're arriving at today's webinar. Again, thank you for making time to be here today. We really appreciate all of your efforts. I am Jerry Walcott, and I am going to be the facilitator for today's conversation. So thank you so much for being here and making time. We know how busy your schedules are, especially in May, but we also know how important it is to take some time for yourself, to learn new things, and to fill your cup. So thank you for being here today. If you didn't hear me and you're just joining, right now everybody's putting into the chat their name, affiliation or department, and what brings you peace in moments of challenge and stress. So we want to really emphasize just a de-stress zone here today. So thank you for being here. Oh, I love that. Being outdoors in hammocks, me too. That is my happy place. Couple things through the housekeeping I just want to walk you through. Live closed captioning is available for today's presentation, so feel free to select that as you come in. We will be answering some questions today. So if you could please just answer or ask your question either in the Q&A box or through the chat throughout today's presentation. We'll hold those till the end. And if we don't get through answering all the questions you have, I'll get together with our presenter and create a Q&A document so we make sure that you have everything that you need. All right, and with that, I'm going to take a moment to introduce Adele James. She is a native of Trinidad, West Indies, a certified professional coach, and specializes in capacity building for organizations serving a variety of geographical, ethnic, and cultural communities. Her work focuses on cultivating collaborative partnerships and centering the building of transformative relationships with clients and communities. Past and current projects include serving as principal consultant for the $140 million grant disbursement under the California Mental Health Services Act statewide prevention and early intervention initiatives. Woo, that's a handful. And then she also has facilitated and developed very many different recommendations for National Council of Large Public Housing Authorities Equity Action Planning process. She holds a BA from Barnard College, Columbia University, and a master's from Stanford in International Development Education. She's been an instructor for the graduate program at USF for Masters in Public Administration and is an adult and youth mental health first aid trainer. And we are so grateful to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Adele.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome to all of you. And it's heartening to see this number of people interested in a topic like this. And we started the meeting off by really asking you, I think, a key question about what brings you peace in moments of challenge and stress, right? And, as I scrolled through the answers, most of them, I don't think I saw anything that had to do with money, right? The things that you talked about were about meditation, about being in the outdoors. Someone put in there about, just playing with their pets. I don't have any pets, but I'm that lady who talks to everybody's dog, right? And wants to know if I could pet the dog. Someone here, walking through the redwoods. So I think the reminder here is that it can get so hectic at times that we can forget what are the things that center and ground us. but also to when, we are encounter someone who may be experiencing, a challenge or under stress. It's a great question to ask. What is it that gives you peace? What has worked in the past in those moments? So I'm looking forward to just going through today with you. And I think that what we want to, add for today is really, think about creating an environment of welcoming and belonging for all. Because oftentimes it is that sense of isolation, that sense of not fitting in, that can be a central factor behind why we don't belong. And so that's in part why I like to start with a land acknowledgement. Um, this is, I think, for me, a way of making the invisible visible, the recognition and the acknowledgement of the tribes who were here, who are still here, but often we don't hear a whole lot about or what the impact has been for them, due to policies and procedures that have been designed to really disenfranchise. So we acknowledge we are learning and unlearning on land that was and is still the tribal lands of the Bear River, the Matale, the Lasik, the Nagatal, Winton, Yana, Yahi, Maidu, Sinkiu, Wailuku, Kedu, Yuki, Pomo, Lake Miwok, Wapo, Manoche, Yukuts, Castanoans, Esalen, Selinin, Tubu Tubalal, Talawa, Shasta, Karak, Yurok, Hupa, Wailukut, Cholulu, Cholula, Chimarike, the Wayat, the Modoc, the Achima, the Atsugui, the Chumash, the Alilik, the Keita Nahmuk, the Serrano, the Gabrielino, Louisiano, Cahulia, and the Kumeya tribes. So, I tried not to butcher it, and I have the phonetic spellings in there. And I think the concern for me is to not make this something performative. And so to really, you can actually Google and look up how to pronounce the name of the tribes. And there's the reference below. Um, as we learn today, we will remember that we are residing on stolen tribal lands taken to build the United States and built by stolen people. That there is a concern as well about being performative in doing these. And I want to say that today is the day of big giving. And I recognize that I've done land acknowledgements, but have not contributed to Native American tribes. And so, made a contribution today. So we have some options about how to make this live. So recognition of knowledge. Too often credit is not given to those responsible for knowledge production. Even more often, their ideas, thoughts, and knowledge are stolen and repackaged for the masses. We acknowledge that much knowledge in this world is produced by and taken from BIPOC people. We acknowledge even if we do not know their names, they deserve to be recognized and given credit for their work. We also recognize that we have benefited from their knowledge production, both created from their labor and taken from their bodies and experiences. And some examples of that are Henrietta Lacks, whose cells have driven a lot of work around cancer research. We think of the Tuskegee experiments, and allowing, really to use the bodies of these individuals to learn and not share with them. So I think when we think about welcoming and belonging, it's not just in the present, but I think having an awareness of the context. So some group norms. Expect and accept a lack of closure. I think understanding about how we create a space that is emotionally, physically, and in all these ways welcoming and belonging, it's an ongoing journey. I am continually learning. Starting out meetings with a land acknowledgement was not something I was doing 10 years ago, right? And so as we become aware, that for me, I expect that there are things I'm going to find out about that I was incorrect about, even if I am part of some groups, right? That I have been incorrect about and learning about, okay, there's no closure here. It's ongoing. Consent to learn and unlearn in public. Ask instead of assuming. And I think that's a really big one, to make this a brave space. I think sometimes we may worry about how we're supposed to sound and what we're supposed to know. And, it was a great relief to me, in some of the roles that I've had, to just not feel like I had to pretend, despite feeling pressure. Just say, you know what, I don't know. But we could work on this together, and to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's a piece about, some of you spoke about this, getting grounded, going back to the body. Because a lot of times, and I'm going to do something with you about how you approach issues and understanding what pathway you take. But getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is about the grounding, the awareness of what's going on, so that you can respond versus react. If you are good with the group norms, if you can use your reactions and pop up your thumb emojis, that would be awesome, and I would get to see it. So just pop up your thumb emojis if you are good, with the group agreements. I think I can see them. Okay. So I'm assuming you're good. Yes, thank you. I statements. Thank you very much. And I believe, I hear, very good. Not you statements, and not speaking on behalf of entire groups, right? I am a person of African descent. I am not African American. I do not speak for the entire Black diaspora, right? So, I statements about what your experience is, whatever lens culturally you happen to come from, be that gender orientation, um, sexual expression, religion. So, I statements. Thank you. I see the thumbs up. Much appreciated. So here's what we're going to be learning about today. And the two goals are to learn about the strategies for trauma-informed communications. So what is that? There's a lot of talk, right, about trauma-informed care. So what does that mean? I mean, what are we supposed to do, right? And believe it or not, I think many of the things you may already know intuitively. And then to increase your understanding of the role of cultural humility in communications that support mental wellness. Again, that's another one of those terms that's out there a lot. So, we're going to focus in on, what do we mean by trauma informed? What is cultural humility? And we will look at how the approach of these methods are important to mental wellness. So, trauma, when we say trauma, what are we talking about? It's something that is pervasive. It often occurs when we have been exposed, or someone has been exposed to an incident or a series of events that are emotionally disturbing or life-threatening. And sometimes the event doesn't even have to happen. Just the idea that it might or could be traumatic for someone. And I think of the story of this woman who, she thought her sister was in the towers, the Twin Towers, when they collapsed. It turned out that her sister wasn't, but the idea of that triggered her and caused trauma. Okay. So, it can have adverse effects, on mental, physical, social, emotional, and even our spiritual well being. So, and when we talk about toxic stress, which they are connected, it's an emotional and or physical response that occurs when a person experiences strong, frequent, and or prolonged adversity without adequate support. So going through a situation, and there could be a variety of them. I was at an event last night, um, and there was a professor I was chatting with who is new to this college, and has come out as being gay. And what he's finding is that so many students now are approaching him and talking about, they're feeling comfortable to talk to him, because of not necessarily feeling like they have adequate support. And so that's another way of worrying about, how are people going to perceive me? I have to say that the periods of time that were the roughest for me around my mental health were actually during school, um, both graduate school and undergraduate. I think more so in graduate school, and not feeling comfortable to talk about it. Not sure that I could finish, because of affording it, right? And never having been to California before, being the only one who looked like me in my class, and not recognizing some of the symptoms of what I was experiencing. So I'm going to talk to you about some of that. What are some of these symptoms? So that perhaps, if you as a student, if you as a faculty are experiencing something like that. And I have to say, I didn't recognize I was actually having anxiety and depression until I Googled it. It had never occurred to me, never mind the years, until I Googled it. And it's like, wait a second, I seem to be fitting those checklists. So to help you be aware of if it's you or someone, and then what are some of the things you might be able to do? So when you talk about a trauma-informed approach, it's about the realization, the recognize, the respond, and the resist. So understand how trauma can affect. So, how can it affect people? Recognize what are the signs of trauma, apply the principles of a trauma-informed approach, and then to resist re-traumatizing. And so, when we talk about realization, it's that people's experiences and behavior are understood in the context of coping strategies. So, it may not be the best response or best behavior, but what they're doing at that time is their coping strategy, right? And their strategies, they may not know this, but this is what they're doing, thinking that that's what will help them to survive. And so to recognize that when you see signs that they may vary, based on gender, age, settings, specific, a lot of other cultural factors to be aware of. So I want you guys to take a look at this. I took it from Doonesbury, and take a look at these cartoons. And these are two individuals passing each other on the street. And you see what they say to each other, but check the bubbles out. And so I want you to put, into the chat, what's going on here? What exactly is going on here? Put in the chat what you're seeing, and Jerry, if you can help me out, so what's going on? What kind of judgment? What are they seeing as risk factors for each other? What are they seeing as mitigating factors for each other? Yeah, so there's judgment, stereotypes, first impressions. The fascinating thing is that all they are saying, they're both saying the same thing to each other. Good evening, right? But there is this whole automatic thing that goes on. So here's what I find fascinating, right? The guy on the left, right, with the groceries, who is white. His risk factors are race and gender and clothing, right? So he thinks the other guy's a risk because he's black, he's male, and he's wearing a baseball cap on backwards, right? And so what does he think are the mitigating factors? So he's kind of calculating what, how am I going to be safe? Mitigating factor are clothing, and that the guy with the FedEx package who is black, right? He is whistling Sondheim. So he's whistling Broadway show tunes. So that must make him safer. And he's got a FedEx package. So let's look at the guy with the FedEx who is black. What are the risk factors? He has the same risk factors. It's race and it's gender. But the third factor for him is situational, that this guy, as far as he's concerned, is in the wrong neighborhood. And what are mitigating factors? Race is a mitigating factor, and that the guy with the groceries, he happens to be humming Motown, which is, i.e., sort of black music, right? So all of this goes on, and we have to ask ourselves, this is kind of like an automatic thing that Doonesbury is talking about this. Like, this is the calculus that goes on, but we do it automatically. And so automatically at times, most of the time, we aren't even aware. And that is how some of that damage that can cause stress, that can cause, has its impacts in terms of trauma can occur for folks. So when we talk about bias, there are two types. There's explicit, and then there is implicit. I might say, I don't like people who like to dye their hair pink. I don't like the color. This is what I think it says about people because they have pink hair. That's being real explicit. But the thing that we need to be mindful of, right, is the implicit and the unconscious. And let me make sure to say this. We all carry it. So this is not a shame blame conversation. We all carry it, period. It's recognizing how it shows up. And we can have it for our own groups. Okay, whatever groups we belong to. It is recognizing how it shows up in us, paying attention to that, so that we have an opportunity to respond versus react. So the question then becomes, when we're interacting with others, where are we entering the conversations? And so if someone, say, comes to us about something, that I don't know, maybe it's a microaggression or something that happened for them. Where do we enter that conversation if it's a cross-cultural conversation? Are we entering it from a place of believing? Are we entering it from a place of thinking? Is it from a place of acting or feeling? And I'll explain to you. When we talk about believing, it's kind of like the soul, our moral grounding, the values we hold, experiences that have shaped who we are. The things that are kind of, hard to express is just like, I know it in my gut. Like, this is what, I know this thing, right? I know it intuitively. And then thinking, it's the mind, it's the thinking, it's the reasoning, it's gathering knowledge and data. So, somebody tells me this, am I trying to calculate, well, how likely is that, and what's the rationale? And then there is the acting. What are we doing, with our hands, our feet? What are we demonstrating when this individual is talking to us about what has happened for them, right? The doing is also about how are we engaged, maybe in addressing a cause, be it about, uh, gender identity, sexual orientation, beyond saying we don't agree? Are we showing up and supporting, right? Are we planning? Are we taking action? And then feelings. Are we entering the conversation from a visceral place? I tend to carry a lot of energy in my chest area. I just, and even now that I'm saying this to you, I am noticing it, right? Because some self-consciousness, right? It's like my around my heart area, or I can feel sometimes the tension in my face. So I think it's for us to pay attention to where are we entering the conversation. The thing that we need to be mindful of is that there is the shadow side to this. Are we approaching this from a place of disbelief? So, this is what someone's telling you. Are you open and listening, or is it disbelief? Are you thinking, or are you ignoring? Are you fatigued, that it's something you don't want to take on? Or, is it a sense of fear that sort of holds you in place? So I think the importance of understanding where do you know, knowing yourself, where do you tend to enter conversations? Because that will give you insight to how you approach things. So I've just shown this to you, and I want to show you a video. I've taken it from the show New Amsterdam, and Dr. Fromm is having conversation with a young man who ends up in the hospital. And so I want you to pay attention to, and if we actually go back to the prior slide, I want you to take a photo of this slide or write it down, because I want you to pay attention to where is Dr. Fromm entering the conversation with this young man. And it's around a situation that occurred for him in school. Even before we go into to Dr. Fromm, for yourselves, where were you entering this conversation? Just a little reflection. Where did you enter the conversation? Did you notice that, watching this, were you more active in the believing? Were you more active in the thinking, acting, feeling? And this is not about it's better to enter from one place than another. This is not shame or blame, but it's about a self-awareness. All right, so we're seeing that for some it was the thinking and also the feeling. Where did you enter? And for those of you with the feeling, where did you feel it? What did you feel? I think it's those sorts of things of noticing, like, okay, what was activated for me? Holding of the breath, sadness, empathy. Okay. For those of you from the thinking place, right? What was some of the thinking? And it's mind, thinking, reasoning, gathering knowledge, data. What were some of the places for the thinking folks? And someone entered from believing. There you go. Thank you, Allison. For the thinking folks, gathering more knowledge, going through this by myself, growing up. Yes. So, just like Netflix and chill on a Friday, and found New Amsterdam. And this really struck me, because a lot of those things that young man was describing about his school experience, or the things he worried about, that was my experience as a graduate student, right? And it wasn't like anybody was doing that specifically to me, right? But that was my worry about what I had taken in about the larger world out there, to the point that I actually did not go to graduation from Stanford. And the whole point of my family immigrating to this country was about education. So, I eventually went 18 years later, but the impacts again. So, use this as a tool. Where are you entering the conversation? The expression on the young man's face hit me immediately, touched me believing, and feeling. So I think it's more information as students, as teachers, right? An awareness of who you are working with. So when we talk about the impacts of bias, and then I'm specifically, I'm thinking about how it can happen most often unconsciously. What you find is that racial ethnic minority youth with behavioral health issues are more readily referred to the juvenile justice system than to specialty primary care compared with white youth. In 2015, among adults with any mental illness, 48% of whites receive mental health services, compared with 31% of Blacks and Hispanics and 22% of Asians. There is actually this sense that Asians don't have a whole lot of mental health challenges. And so what happens then is that they do not get asked questions or assessed. And that's in part why you see those numbers are so low. When it comes to LGBTQ youth, 28% of LGBTQ youth, including 40% of transgender youth, said they felt depressed most or all of the time during the previous 30 days, as compared to only 12% of non-LGBTQ youth. So only 12% of non-LGBTQ youth felt depressed over the past 38 days or 30 days versus 28% of LGBTQ youth and 40% of trans youth. So one has to ask yourself, what is different about the circumstances that emotionally would lead to such differences on the basis, right, of sexual identity? So looking at some of the clinical implications of discrimination and oppression, these are some of the things that can occur, right? The clinical implications. It doesn't mean that because somebody is depressed, or rather someone experiences depression or oppression, that this is automatically what is going to occur. But if you look at a lot of the health outcomes, right, for communities of color, they tend to be poorer. And, part of it has to do with discrimination and oppression, right? Where you live, love, learn, play, work. If it happens to be a poorer community with fewer resources, right? Where, economically it's harder, there's a greater deal of stress that can occur. So when we talk about signs and symptoms, and a key one when we're talking about trauma, is anxiety. And so the things to pay attention to are the behavior, the appearance, what you see in terms of their feelings, and also the thoughts. Now, okay, if somebody's feeling like this for a day or a couple days, no. But what we're looking for are patterns. It is the length of the time of symptoms. If this is something that's going on for more than 2 weeks, that's something that needs to be addressed. And what we're also looking at is the severity. So how long the condition is apparent for and the severity of it. Okay, those are the things to pay attention to. Unfortunately, most folks, if you were to take a guess as to how long it takes folks to actually get treatment, it's about 10 years. So they may be exhibiting, signs and symptoms for a really long period of time before they actually get care. And the status, it's like about 10 years. The unfortunate piece is that experiencing a mental health condition untreated for that length of time makes it even harder to fully recover. It becomes even more debilitating over time. Okay. So signs and symptoms. And the thing is that some of these signs and symptoms can pretty much be like serious health conditions. The cardiovascular, pounding heart, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, blushing, right? That could be anxiety. It can also be the symptoms of a heart attack. And so I think for if you don't have that training and somebody is experiencing something like that, among the things to do is to ask them, have you had this before? Do you know what this is? Is it anxiety? To get some, to assess for the risk that's occurring for them. And if they are unsure, you know, get some medical help. It could be respiratory, fast breathing, shortness of breath, neurological, dizziness, headaches, sweating, numbness, gastrointestinal, choking, dry mouth, stomach pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and musculoskeletal, muscle aches and pain, especially in the neck, the shoulder, and the back. And that's oftentimes where folks will carry a lot of tension, right? And so, these are signs and symptoms of anxiety. And as well that, what may be going on for us mentally, it can have an impact. It can hurt physically, okay? So again, how anxiety can present itself. And this was something that was designed for younger students. A desire to control people and events, challenges getting to sleep, feeling agitated or angry, defiance and other challenging behavior, having high expectations for self, including school, work, and sports, avoiding activities or events. And sometimes it's like the stuff that you have liked to do and then showing no interest, right? So, again, it is not though that you see one of these signs or symptoms once or twice, but again, it's about, the length of time and the severity. And I see here, and women and minorities are more frequently told the symptoms were just anxiety when they were in fact physical health emergencies. Yes. And that, yes. And it's part of, what we see. And thank you, Allison. Outcomes for low birth weight babies, among women of African descent, even when the socioeconomics are equal. A lot of time what it has to do with, and what the research is showing, is the stress of being who they are in the society, that is the challenge. So I want to show you this next video, and we're getting to, so what can you do? How do you frame your thinking, your approach, right, to this situation? So Jerry, go for it.
One word to describe cultural humility for me is love, actually.
If I had to encapsulate cultural humility, or the whole concepts of cultural humility, it doesn't do it justice, but the word that I think of it is essence.
Escuchar.
Being.
You.
Opening.
Receive. Compassion.
Love.
The principles of cultural humility offer one more framework to contribute to what has got to be our ultimate goal, yes? Our ultimate goal is that there will be a sense of equity, a sense of equality, and a kind of respect that we are driving forward.
Cultural humility that is a multi-dimensional concept, and certainly Melanie Turvalon and I conceptualized 3 dimensions.
The first is lifelong learning and critical self-reflection. And in that critical self-reflection, it is the understanding of how each of us, every single one of us, is a complicated, multidimensional human being. Each of us comes with our own histories and stories, our heritage, our point of view. You're looking at me now. I am very fair-skinned. When I was a little girl, my hair was blonde. My eyes are blue. People often tried to call me anything but African American. I have a history. My identity is rooted in that history. My parents gave me the knowledge of my own social identity, and my own experience in life has created that. I get to say who I am.
The second tenet, after self-reflection and ongoing lifelong learning and development, is this notion that we must mitigate the power imbalances, to recognize and mitigate the power imbalances that are inherent often in our clinician patient or clinician client or service provider community dynamics.
And then finally, the piece that I would offer that Jan and I feel people often either don't read or don't like, which is, and the institution has to model these principles as well.
And we can stop it here, Jerry. Thank you. Yeah. So, I really like the concept, in that it's what it centers is allowing individuals to express who they are, and for us to pay attention to that, right? And the recognition of lifelong learning and self-reflection, the mitigation of power imbalances, because there often is, there's student-teacher power imbalance, right? That they come at a lot of different ways. It can be economic, right? That we can find imbalances on gender, around race and orientation. And so to recognize, are we supporting an environment that allows others to show up fully as they are? This professor that I spoke with was new. And I think what he was struck by was the number of students that, as I guess word got around through, the students that he was gay, started showing up, because of a sense of, safety, a sense of this is somebody that they could speak to. And then what is it that our institutions are doing to support an environment of welcoming and belonging? I work with a number of organizations where this is something, it's not just getting people in the door, but once they're there, are they going to feel comfortable? I like to think of it as that, it's like when I invite someone to my home, I want them to feel comfortable. And, I think about what it would require for them to feel comfortable and to be themselves. What would it take for me in someone's home? And how can I replicate that in my own? So I think to remember, these are some of the concepts. So I think, in terms of, and this is all about this, all of this conversation is about the things that go into impacting mental health, right? It's our worldview and how we show up and what sort of space we create for others. And so, we often see things from the lens that is a priority for us and may not be aware of how that is working. So, our respective cultures may influence our perception of the world, how we interpret experiences, the goals we select, and so to know that, how is, there was a homeless woman near where I live, and I saw that, her cooler styrofoam was broken. So I was like, do you need another cooler? Because it was going to be a 114-degree day. And she said, yes. I went and bought a cooler. I bought a cooler that was plastic, that had wheels, that had a handle. And I took that to her. And her reaction to me was, why did you buy that? My lens of privilege was of class. Buying her that cooler would have made her a target. That's why she didn't want it. And I did not understand that. So I took it back and got a styrofoam one. So I think, and that was an eye opener for me. She was a woman of African descent. I thought I understood her, but there was the class difference. So having a conversation about our cultural lens can help to lead to important dialogue about how cultural differences between and among staff, clients, students may affect the way we choose to establish and build relationships. The one thing that I want to say from this is that nobody is culturally neutral. It's like you pick it up in the air. Nobody is culturally neutral. The messages that are continually repeated on media, on social media, we pick up that stuff and we absorb it. None of us is culturally neutral, and to be aware of that and to pay attention. So, in thinking about working with each other and how to reframe, how to even have conversations, these are some, I love having questions that I can ask and understanding how to ask it. And it's not, what's wrong with you, but what happened, right? So tell me your story. What happened? To sympathy, sympathy are adaptive coping necessary to survive, not a pathology, or symptoms rather, right? Are adaptive coping. And so to see it that way, that the symptoms are a coping strategy, that the behaviors are a way that people are trying to communicate. They may not know best how to do that, but that's what they're doing. And so the symptoms, not to think of the behavior as abnormal, but this is what they're doing and this is how they're coping, and that is what is normal for them. So mindful inquiry in terms of talking to folks, what I hear you saying, and going back to that person who put in the I statements, tell me more about what you meant by. It's really about giving people space to share, but also bringing out, it's like, look, I have noticed that, you have seemed sad for the last 2 weeks. Would you like to share what's going on? It's okay to say, I'm really concerned. You've seemed sad that, for this extended period of time, this isn't normally how you are, or I am noticing that you're often X, Y, and Z, not in a blame or shame, but here's what I observe. Here's why I am worried for you. Do you want to tell me about what's going on, or what angered you about what happened? What's familiar about what happened? How did it affect you? How does it affect you now? So I think to think of questions that in a way are mindful in the inquiry, to reframe that the symptoms are adaptive. It's about what happened, not what's wrong. The behavior is really about, it's a form of communication, and that the symptoms are a normal reaction to abnormal circumstances. I'm going to stop there. And see, that's a lot to cover, but I hope you will get the PowerPoint, but just as a starting point, and to see if there are any questions or comments. So Margaret says normalizing is so helpful. Yeah. And not to, because, it might be something that we end up experiencing. Questions or comments?
Adele, there's a question in the chat. What do you think about the importance of upbringing and the family influence as well?
It's here's the thing, right? I think upbringing is important, but then if you are from a family that, you know, the social determinants that they experience um are limited, right? So where they live, where the kids go to school, the job opportunities in the community, all of that stuff impacts, right, upbringing. I worked with the Council of Large Public Housing Authorities, and a lot of times people want to blame folks in public housing for, like, up yourself by your bootstraps without looking at the historical context of why those individuals are there, the policies and practices, redlining included, right, that force them into those neighborhoods. So I think my point is, we have to look at people do the best they can do from where they're at. And so my thing is about equity in the conditions that people experience, and what do we need to do for that? What else is there, Jerry?
What do you think about when you notice that somebody's presenting anger? Do you have any insight on how you can approach someone with that trauma-informed lens and communicate with them to help
Yeah.
de-escalate? Any guidance around that?
Yeah, you know what? What anger? So here's one of the questions. What angered you about what happened? I was in the airport. This dude was angry. I noticed how he was behaving with customers, right? Like, he almost wanted to pick a fight. And I needed some food to eat. I was like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? It seems like day's kind of tough, huh? And I wasn't doing it in a sort of, shady, snarky way. It just was like, he's having his behavior, he's communicating something. He's not happy. He's not having a good day. And that's, and just to ask him about it, you know, made a difference. And so, hey, what's going on? This isn't normally who you are. You seem upset, but also just be willing to sort of shut up and listen, not to try to change their feelings, but to listen to what they're saying. That's often the thing, people, and to believe them. Go back to Iggy Frome. He didn't doubt the kid. In fact, you know, he helped him see that, no, this is real, right? He believed him. So, Ari, students who is the recipient of judgment on their body size and skin color from their family, where is the support network? I Are you asking me that question? Well, okay, one support network I can think about is, and specifically around race, and I don't know if, is there is Safe Black Space that began here in Sacramento around the time of the Stephon Clark murder. And if you Google them, it's for people of African descent to, really, to support that group in really a challenging time. And part of what they talk about is what trauma looks like, and share about resources. If there are student groups, but I think it's about, I don't know about the support networks. There's a lot of stuff online that one can find, certainly around LGBTQ. Sacramento has the LGBT Center that does a lot of different activities. Those are some of the things I think of. And yes, Areli, be kind to oneself in the process of learning and becoming self-aware. Absolutely, positively. And I said it at least twice. This is not about shame or blame. This is not a shame or blame conversation. I think that's often where people go, when we're talking about differences. If shame or blame worked, we would not be talking about these issues now. So that's a good one.
All right, Adele, thank you so much. We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to, and there are a couple questions in the chat and in the Q&A space. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get together with Adele and extract those answers and put together a Q&A document. Today's presentation was recorded, so the recording will be available along with the PowerPoint and any resource material that we collect. I just want to say to you, Adele, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. We really appreciate the time you've given to everyone. It was a fabulous presentation. Be sure to let us know of any of events that are happening in your community college. And if you haven't already, we hope that you'll join the newsletter on cccstudentmentalhealth.org. All right. Well, thank you so much again for everyone
One
being
more
here.
thing.
Go ahead, Adele.
Yeah. So, Helen, thank you for this comment. And I think it's the comment of when we finally get education that we may not be, as people of color, may not be accepted by family, right? Being seen as too intellectual. What I've had to do is go find my own tribe. And it's been folks that I would not necessarily expect, but that for all of us to find someone who we can share our hearts with, who see us for who we are and love and acknowledge that.
Mhm.
You know, so find what you need. Look for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Adele. I appreciate that. Definitely doing that now.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for being here today. We hope you'll join us next time, and feel free to reach out at any time. Jackie's email here is here at the end, and I'm Jerry Walcott, and we want to say thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today and spending the last hour with us.
Thank you.